Okay. Yeah, that's interesting that Alter Rebbe does not, yeah. Okay, we are Pei Zion Amud Beis, 87b at the bottom of the page. One, two, three, four, 5 lines on the bottom of the page, right in the middle of the line. Amar Rav. Amar Rav, Rav stated, Tfilas Neilah, the fifth and final prayer of Yom Kippur, known as Nila, the closing of the gates as we described it, literally the closing of the gates of the temple, but also the closing of the gates of heaven. So that final fifth prayer, Paiteres es Shal Arvis, exempts one from davening the Ma'ariv of the evening service that night after Yom Kippur is over. Which means, therefore, 2 things. Good morning, Robert. The first thing that it means that the Gemara is about to tell us, and the second thing that it means, the Gemara is going to discuss in a moment, which is, what it means is that in the opinion of Rav, the Neilah, the fifth prayer, is actually prayed after Yom Kippur is over. When is this fifth prayer done? So by our custom, it's that this prayer is done before Yom Kippur is out, before the night begins, before the day ends. Whereas, if we're going to say, as Rav states now, that Neilah, that this fifth prayer of Yom Kippur can cover one's obligation to daven Ma'ariv that night, it would mean that it's daven, that this Neilah is done after Yom Kippur is over. That's one thing it means, which the Gemara is going to discuss presently. But it also means Rav Amar, so this therefore says the Gemara, Rav lo taimei, Rav is following his view, the Amar, which says, that it's an additional prayer, as opposed to the opinion mentioned yesterday, or actually before Shabbos. The opinion we mentioned before Shabbos, which was that the fifth prayer does not have to be a full-on prayer with an Amida. You just say Me'anu Mechayenu. There's just a sort of supplication paragraph you say at Nila, but not a full Amida. That is obviously not the view of Rav, because Rav just stated by doing Nila, you can cover your Ma'ariv, you can cover your evening. So if Nila covers your evening, it means Nila is a full prayer. And that also means that this full prayer is done after Yom Kippur is over, which is why if you did Nila, you don't have to do Ma'ariv that night. Not our custom. Right? We do Nila before Yom Kippur is over, plus we do a Ma'ariv afterwards. But in Rav's view, as we're stating it now, he says, quote, if you do Nila, you don't have to do Ma'ariv later. Which means, A, it's a full-on prayer, not just the paragraph of supplication as described in the opinion last week, and B, it means it's done after Yom Kippur is over. And there, as the Gemara explains, because, as we just noted, it's a full-on prayer, and it's done after Yom Kippur is over. So Kivin Tzalile, once you've already done that prayer, you've done a prayer in the evening, right? You've done a prayer after Yom Kippur is over, a full prayer, Sulay Tzarech, you don't have to do another prayer. This is the Gemara's commentary on Rav's statement. The Gemara challenges and says, did Rav say that Neilah indeed covers your obligation to do Yom Kippur? To do Ma'ariv, to do evening service that night? That implies that the evening service is an obligation. Never mind the issue of Neilah and the controversy around Neilah itself being a full-on prayer and Neilah being done after Yom Kippur is over rather than during Yom Kippur. That we'll get to in a moment. But first, Rav is saying that if you pray Neilah, it covers your obligation to do Ma'ariv, implying that evening service itself is an obligation. Well, that's the Gemara's first challenge. Did Rav indeed say that, implying that the evening service is an obligation? Rav said in the chapter 8 brachas, the halacha follows, in accordance to the view, that Tfilas Arvis Rishus, that the evening prayer is actually not obligatory, it's a customary. Rishus, which means it's optional. This is a discussion we had when we learned Gemara brachas. Right, we have 3 services every day, evening, morning, afternoon. And the morning and afternoon are in lieu of the offerings in the temple, which was one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And the evening service, Ma'ariv, is only in lieu of the fact that there were parts of the offering that sat in the on the altar all night. Considering that the third prayer is not a replacement for an actual offering, there is the view, and this is actually the halacha, that the evening prayer is not obligatory, it's optional. which is why we don't have repetition of the Amida. Now, the reality is, this is the kind of optional thing, which, considering the fact that all Jews do it universally, it's become obligatory. But it's not obligatory because the sages commanded it, it's obligatory because Jews accepted it as an obligation. But in essence, it's really rishos, it's really optional. And therefore, and Rav is of the view that it's optional. If that's the case, why would Rav say now that Neilah exempts you from your obligation to do Ma'ariv when he's of the view that Ma'ariv is not even an obligation to begin with? So what do you mean by doing Neilah after Yom Kippur is over? You cover your obligation for Ma'ariv. Ma'ariv is not an obligation. Clear? Says the Gemara, Rav, his main point, is what the Gemara is saying, is the main point of Rav is trying to say is two things. He's trying to say that Neilah is done after Yom Kippur is over, and he's trying to say that Neilah is to be a full prayer rather than just a paragraph of supplication like the other of you mentioned last week. And he said that, the way he expressed that is by telling you that if you are of the view that Ma'ariv is obligation, Neilah covers it. But not that he's of the view that Ma'ariv is an obligation. His main concern is to describe to you Neilah. These 2 points about Neilah, A, that it's done after Yom Kippur is over, B, that it's a full-on prayer rather than just a paragraph of supplication. And he expressed that by telling you that if you happen to be of the view that Ma'ariv is obligation, Neilah would cover it. But not that he himself is of the view that Ma'ariv is an obligation. Clear the Gemara's answer? And if the Gemara says, the Divrei ha'omer chayva ka'amar, Rav's intention was to tell you what the law would be if you were of the view that Ma'ariv is an obligation, but not that he himself is of that view. Okay. Basically, the Gemara raises the following challenge. And this challenge is going to push us in the direction, it's going to clarify for us that which we stated earlier, that Rav is of the view that Nila is to be done after Yom Kippur is over. But the way the Gemara gets there is by bringing, first of all, a challenge. A challenge from Mishnaic H text, which clearly stipulates that Ma'ariv and Nila are both to be prayed. Rav said that if you do Nila, it covers your Ma'ariv. We're going to have a Mishnaic H text which says that if you do Nila, you still have to do Ma'ariv. That's contradiction. And the answer is going to be, well, there's a view, that's only if you're of the view that Nila is to be done before nightfall. Whereas Rav is the view that Nila is done after nightfall. That's where the Gemara is going. But the Gemara gets there by this challenge. Clear? So notice I went a step ahead, but I'm taking you how the Gemara got there. Okay. Which, of course, I only got there because I read the Gemara, not because I figured it out. Okay. Maybe the Gemara raises the challenge. There's a Mishnah H text which reads, or Yom Kippurim, the night of Yom Kippur, after Kol Nidre, the way we, in our system, our program, the night of Yom Kippur, the first night after Kol Nidre, Mispalel wanted to pray Sheva, 7 blessings. Right? As we described many times, Tefillah, the Amida is divided into 3 sections. First 3 blessings are universal, no matter what day of the year it is, no matter what prayer it is. The first 3 blessings are always there, blessings of praise. Last 3 blessings, no matter what day of the year it is, no matter what prayer it is, are always there. 3 blessings of thanks. The middle is what changes. During the year, we have 13 blessings of requests, and then on holidays, we exchange those 13 and we insert 1 blessing related to the theme of the holiday. That's totaling 7. 3 opener, 3 closing, and 1 middle. So that's what a person does the night of Yom Kippur after Kol Nidre. Mizvada, and then he does confession there too, because it's Yom Kippur. Shachris in the morning. Again, Sheva, he does 7 blessings, same ones. Mizvada does confession. Musaf, the additional prayer, the Musaf prayer, which is there at every holiday or a special occasion, or Chodesh included. Then Sheva also does 7 blessings. Mizvada does confession. B'Neilah, in the 5th prayer, interestingly, it skips Ma'ariv, it skips Mincha. I wonder if the note it says to add it. Where's the footnote go? Yep, the footnote adds it. Suspected it did. The footnote says to add Mincha. But anyway, at Nila, at the 5th prayer, Mispalel Sheva, you again daven a full Amida, 7 blessings. And Misvada, and you do confession there. And then the Mishnah concludes, Arvis, nightfall, after Ma'ariv is over, Mispalel Sheva, you do 7 blessings also. Me'ein Shmona Esrei. And the 7 blessings should be similar to the 18 blessings that we do. Let's explain. So, as I mentioned, Every prayer is the same universally. The opening is the same, the first three blessings, and the closing is the same, the last three blessings. Praise and thanks, always the same. The middle is what changes. So during the year, we have 13 blessings in the middle of requests. Now, there is a blessing, which the Gemara and Brachas describes, known as Havinenu. That's the opening word of that blessing. This Havinenu is a conglomerate of all the 13 requests, but stuck into one blessings. May you grant us knowledge, forgiveness, tshuva, redemption, healing, parnasa. All the things we request for are all condensed into one blessing. And it was done for someone who's traveling and he's concerned with standing in the middle of the highway without police or highway patrol. It's a pretty dangerous place to stand around. He's worried about spending too much time praying because of the danger, and therefore it's distracting. So the sages say, okay, condense your prayer. Do the 3 opening, do the 3 closing, and then do that middle bracha, just having one bracha, condensing all of them. So this opinion is of the view that the evening of Yom Kippur is the same thing. After Yom Kippur is over, you just fasted for 25 hours. Everybody's hungry. So instead of making everybody do a drawn out full 18 blessings, do the condensed version. Making a total of 7 brachas for Yishmon Esrei, saving everybody a few minutes. 3 praise opening, 3 thanks closing, and in the middle do 1 blessing condensing all brachas. Thus making it, so it says Sheva, you're doing 7 blessings, but the 7 are me'ain, are a condensed version of Yishmon Esrei, all 18. This is the first view. But Rabbi Chanani Gamliel says, Mishum Avoisov, in the name of his fathers. His fathers, Gamliel, come from a line of Nesiim, a line of princes of Israel, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Gamliel, and Rabbi Gamliel the first, and Hillel, goes very far back, and Yehuda Nasi is part of that same line. So Rabbi Chanina says in the name of his fathers, I assume that's what it means. It means in the name of his line of prince leaders of ancestry. He should do the full 18 blessings. So it's a dispute. Are we concerned with people who are starving and therefore we're going to cut down the prayer by 3 minutes? Or by 5 minutes and make them do the condensed version? Or do we obligate them to do the full 18 blessings from Ma'ariv? And why would we make them do all 18 rather than the condensed version? Says the Gemara on top, Peches Amud Aleph 88a, because it's the end of Ma'ariv, it's the end of Yom Kippur, and the end of Yom Kippur, the end of any holiday like Shabbos, at Ma'ariv, in Atachanan, in the first of the blessings after the first 3, in the first of the request blessings, we do a special insert in which we do a miniature Havdalah, distinguish between the holy day and the profane day, known as Atachanan, right? Atachanan Das, which is Havdalah. So because you have to make that prayer in your bracha, therefore, says Rabbi Chanina, you should do all 18, because you can't stick the Atachanan into Lavinenu. The condensed version cannot contain within it also the Havdalah. And because you need to make Havdalah in your Ma'ariv, therefore say the full 18. So now, all to say that whether you're of the view that Ma'ariv after Yom Kippur should have all 18 blessings, or whether you're of the view like the first view that Ma'ariv after Yom Kippur only has 7. Either way, this mission is clear. You do Neilah and Ma'ariv. Whereas you, Rav, said that if you do Neilah, you don't have to do Ma'ariv. Thus, a contradiction. And therefore the Gemara says, Tanoihi. There's a dispute going on here. There's a dispute whether or not Neilah is to be done during Yom Kippur, and therefore Ma'ariv is the next day, and therefore you must do Ma'ariv, or is Neilah to be done after Yom Kippur is over? And therefore, like Rav, you would be covered for your Ma'ariv already. But let's see how the Gemara comes to the conclusion that there's a dispute as to whether or not Neilah is to be done in Yom Kippur or after Yom Kippur. Says Gemara Tanoi, there's a dispute here. The Tanya, as we've learned, Kol Chayvei Tfilos, anyone who it so happens that on Yom Kippur he has to go to mikveh. There's a slew of reasons why a person would be going to mikveh. Today, there's pretty much only 1/2 reasons why someone would be going to mikveh. Number 1 is a woman who, after her menstruation period, and then at the end of her days of cleanliness, she goes to mikveh to be with her husband. And then today you have, not really common practice, but in theory today, a man who's had a seminal emission would go to mikveh. It's been rescinded, but it still exists as a thing. But of course, in temple times, many more reasons why you might be going to mikveh. So says the Gemara, Kol Chayvei Tfilos, anyone who's obligated to go to mikveh on Yom Kippur. Toivlin Kedarkad, you go to mikveh as you would be Yom Kippur, even on Yom Kippur. Even though there is a prohibition against washing on Yom Kippur. Nonetheless, this is a washing of a mitzvah, and the prohibition against washing, as we discussed at length way back, is all about your enjoyment, and here has nothing to do with your enjoyment. It's a mitzvah, and therefore you can go to mikveh, if you're so required to do so. Chassidim do not go to mikveh every day, do not go on Yom Kippur, by the way. Go before Yom Kippur, not on Yom Kippur. But nonetheless, if you were biblically obligated, maybe you would go. Okay, now Nida, the Yolda, is a woman who finished her menstruation period, or Yolda is a woman who just gave birth. Tevelas Kedarkan B'lei Yom Kippur. They go to mikveh as they would at night of Yom Kippur. So many of the people who are supposed to go to mikveh biblically are supposed to go during the daytime, which would mean the day of Yom Kippur, if that so happens to be the day they're supposed to go to mikveh. Whereas Nida, a woman who's finishing her cleanliness, she has to go to mikveh at nighttime. And if the Gemara says, even if the night of her mikveh is the night of Yom Kippur, she should go then. Okay, if you ever run into this issue and you see that your wife might have to go to mikveh before Yom Kippur, consult your rabbi before you do anything. Before you send your wife to the mikveh on Yom Kippur, consult with a rabbi.
Nowadays, it's pushed off.
There's all kinds of, because we have chumras, we do certain stringencies that aren't biblically mandated, and therefore the mikveh time that we go isn't necessarily the same biblically mandated mikveh time that they used to go back in the day when they were following the strict letter of the law. Women over the centuries have taken it upon themselves to be more stringent, and therefore the halacha doesn't necessarily align perfectly. But in theory, it's a possibility. Consult your rabbi. Anyway, that's not the discussion today. Okay, Baal Kari, a guy who had a seminal emission in Yom Kippur. So he only realizes it's one certain point during the day. And he's got to go to mikveh if he's going to follow the instruction of Ezra, which I mentioned before has been rescinded. But the Ezra instituted that anyone who's had a seminal emission should not engage in any holy activity until he's gone to mikveh, whether reading Shema, praying, learning Torah, any of those things. Today it's been rescinded. But in theory, that's the law. So now this person, it's the middle of Yom Kippur, he realizes he has to go to mikveh, because he realizes he had a seminal emission, so he's got to go to mikveh now. So when should he go? Now he's only going to go if he's required to do a prayer later. Which means if it's after all the day's prayers, then why go to mikveh now? You have no prayer coming up anyway. Right? So why go to mikveh? You're only violating. You're only lifting the prohibition on washing on Yom Kippur because the mikveh you're doing now is obligatory for you. Now the Ezra's institution is only if you're about to pray after someone emission. Before you pray, go to mikveh. But if you have no prayer coming, why go to mikveh? Wait till after Yom Kippur is over. Following? And therefore, says the Mishnah, Toivel v'hoilech, you can go to mikveh all day, ad mincha, only until you've prayed mincha. Once you've prayed mincha, there's no more prayers coming forward, and therefore no reason to go to mikveh. That would mean, when are you doing Nila? After Yom Kippur is over. Because once mincha is done, according to this view, there's no more prayers that day. So why go to mikveh now? Wait till Yom Kippur is over and then go to mikveh. Which means, in this view, Nila doesn't exist until after Yom Kippur is over. That's the opinion of Rav. Whereas Rabbi Yossi says, Kolayim Kulay, you can go to mikveh all day, even after mincha is over. Because even after mincha is over, you still have one more prayer to go, Nila. So here you see a dispute. One view says, once mincha is done, no more prayers for the day, and therefore no more going to mikveh, and therefore Nila is only after Yom Kippur, like Rav. And therefore, if you're doing Nila after Yom Kippur is over, it can cover your ma'ariv. Whereas Rabbi Yossi says, all the way to the end of the day you can go to mikveh, because you still, at the end of the day, still have a prayer to do, Nila. And therefore, in that view, Nila cannot cover your evening service, because Nila is done before day's over. That's how we practice. Nila is done just before Yom Kippur is over, and then we daven the full ma'ariv. That's our custom. So we're going to continue more depthly in this discussion, but I just want to share something interesting, maybe suggested. Al-Pi Kabbalah, a little mystical idea as to what the dispute here is, if Nila is on Yom Kippur or after Yom Kippur. What's the root of the spiritual dispute? Perhaps. So we know that there are 5 prayers in Yom Kippur. And we know there are 5 levels to the soul. And Chassidus explains that each prayer corresponds to another level of the soul. So most days of the year we only pray 3. On special occasions, Yom Tov, Rosh Chodesh, we pray, and Shabbos we pray 4. And once a year, Yom Kippur, we pray 5. Which means, on a regular day of the year, we're operating with 3 levels of the soul. And that's what we're praying with. And those 3 levels are, without getting too deeply, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, those are the 3 names. And they correspond to, A, my ability to act. That's the first level of soul we live with every single day, we're acting. B, my ability to feel. We're always feeling in our world, even if it's weekday. And number 3, our ability for intelligence. Intelligence, emotions, behavior. That's our day-to-day operating system. Shabbos and Yom Tov, we get to a higher level. The fourth level of soul, which is delight, enjoyment, pleasure, desire. That's what Shabbos and Yom Tov is. It's a day of delight. It's not a day of activity. It's a day to step back from activity and enjoy the glory of Rosh Chodesh. Sorry? So Rosh Chodesh is not the same, but Rosh Chodesh is also a chag in some sense. Right? There is a certain element, actually, even in Rosh Chodesh, of refraining from work. Women refrain from work during certain times. Laundry, sorry? It's a minhag, right? It's true. It's not the same level, but it still has, sorry? Yeah, it still has a certain element of removedness from the rest of the activity of the rest of the day or year. Sorry? Chol Hamoed also there's this prohibition of working on a Chol Hamoed. Actually, even more than Rosh Chodesh. It's unfortunately one of those overlooked set of laws, but Rosh Chodesh, Chol Hamoed also has preventions on working. When it comes closer to Chol Hamoed, we can discuss that, the laws of that. Okay, so that's the fourth level. We're engaging at a little higher level. And then, so what's higher than that? Nila, the fifth level of the soul, the Yechidah Shebenefesh. That level of the soul is the essence of the soul. I am a Yid. Not even I'm enjoying being Jewish. Right? There's acting like a Jew. There's feeling like a Jew. There's thinking like a Jew, or understanding like a Jew. There's enjoying like a Jew. Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Yom Tov. And then there is being a Jew. Beyond feeling, I am a Yid. That's Yechidah Shebenefesh, the essence of the soul. I am a Jew. I'm one with Hashem, period. Feel, not feel, do, don't do. I am a Jew. And that's the essence of Yom Kippur, as we discussed here in the past. The essence of the Itzumo Shel Yom Kippur, the essence of the day of Yom Kippur atoning, is because you are a Yid. Period. Sorry? Yeah, it's complete detachment for that very reason. Because this I am. Oh, and there comes perhaps, this is the dispute as to whether the Neilah is on Yom Kippur or after Yom Kippur. If the Neilah is on Yom Kippur, what you're stating is your essential state of being as a Jew is so transcendent from anything that exists. It's your height of Yom Kippur. Or maybe, like the other view, Neilah is done after Yom Kippur. Because that essential connection you have with Hashem, bring that into your everyday life. And therefore Neilah is after Yom Kippur. So maybe there is the two views, and obviously there could be, in this sense, both of them are correct. It's true, my essential state of being as a Jew is this essential being of Yom Kippur beyond anything I possibly experience ever. Because this is who I am. It's also simultaneously true that this essential state of being, I am a Yid, must be infused the rest of my year as well. And thus we do it, and thus according to this view, Neilah is done after Yom Kippur is over. So in the spiritual sense, they're both maintained. Even though in halacha, obviously, we only have one. Okay, more in depth on the halacha level, God willing, coming tomorrow. Have a wonderful day, buddy.